What's going on, Falcons fans? Hey, man, we got another one coming at you after a preseason game. Our Atlanta Falcons went live. It's Toby D. I got my man, JR, and we about to jump right into this exciting, fun preseason game we saw in week one last night by our Atlanta Falcons. JR, what's going on,
Man,
man?
like I had like all the nerves, all the jitters, and I was kind of chuckling at myself because I'm like, it's preseason, completely different like scenario. Don't have hardly any of your franchise players, so on and so forth. Like no expectations, but I still found myself like being super like angsty last night as the game was fixing to kick off. Um, but man, it turned out to be a pretty exciting game to watch last night, and not just because we won. And obviously, that was you always want to see your team win. But that was an exciting brand of football that we saw last night.
Yeah, it really was, man. I tell you what, before we even get started, I got to give a congratulations to our former center,
Mm,
Todd McClure. We already know he is going to be inducted into the Ring of Honor by the Atlanta Falcons. It was a very touching moment. They showed it briefly last night with him talking about that. And congratulations to Mud Duck, man. It's very exciting to have him going in. He deserves it. Also, man, we don't talk about special teams enough. So I want to go on ahead and get that out there. Special teams actually did a pretty good job covering kicks last night. Marquise Williams, the special teams coordinator, and I know I joked about that at the last practice where they didn't look like they really put a lot of emphasis on special teams drills and things like that. But they showed up last night, covered kicks well. Bradley Punyon did his
right.
thing, and of course, our
Oh
man
yeah,
Coop did
right.
his thing.
Yeah,
So
y'all
yeah,
gonna see that tweet from me a lot this year. That thank coup, because yeah, like he was on point again last night, showing that he's one of the better kickers in the league. And like in a sense, like how lucky are we to go? We had that little like your little hiccup when Matt Bryant like was let go, then brought back, and then retired. But to really not miss much of anything, to go from basically from Matt Bryant to Young Wei Koo, um,
yeah.
like like we should be thankful as Falcons fans for that, because there are teams that are out there drafting kickers in the fourth round because they don't have a kicker. So um, super glad to have Koo in the organization, especially being like having him kind of back home in a sense, him going down to Georgia Southern, and now getting to play for the Falcons. Did you see that deal where that fan came all the way from Korea to meet him?
Yep, I
I thought
saw
that was
that.
super
Yes,
cool.
I
I thought
did.
that was super
Yeah.
super cool to see that. So yeah, very glad to have Koo. Pinion looked good. Um, in his punting duties. Um, didn't have any good to see. We didn't have any like long snapping issues. Um, Liam McCullum seemed to be doing just fine. You didn't notice it, so that's what you want to. That's what you want to have when it comes to long snappers. So I
Yeah.
know we longtime Falcon Josh Harrison is now on another team, and that was kind of a for people like us, that was a dust up at the beginning of the off season. So to not
Yeah.
have to worry about that, Liam McCullum did a good job last night. So there's your special team minute of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. We had to get it on out the way, man. But man, you ready to jump
Oh
on
yeah, man,
into it, man?
exactly. Let's just like go right at it, right at the teeth of it. Um, like right off the rip, the defense was on the field first, and I ain't gonna lie, man, it was kind of frustrating. The Lions were able just to march right down the field and score. We still weren't really generating a ton of pressure on the quarterback. Hopefully, that's something that will change as we get going into the preseason. But I will say, you can definitely see why they wanted Rashad Evans uh,
Yes.
on the field.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure I get this right. Like that Joker had 4 tackles last night on that one drive.
Yeah.
So
His
big
physicality
time.
showed up very early, and he's going to set that standard for the physicality. I mean, he bust through there and busting his stopping that running back on the first couple
Yep.
of plays, and everything was looking good for him. So I'm glad
No,
for
yeah,
him.
exactly. That was a uh, like I said, if there's one theme that I can carry on through the through the night was like the physicality of all the players. If that's the culture that Arthur Smith's talking about and Dean Pease is talking about, it was really on display early last night. I mean, and you can. Was there anything else? I was about to jump into the first string offense. Was there anything that you saw defensively on that first drive that caught your attention?
Yeah, well, I'll say this much. Of course, Detroit and the Falcons are familiar with each other. We played each other in the regular season last year. For anybody to tell you that teams don't game plan during preseason, they would be lying. Because even though they're not tendency specific, really jumping into that and spending hours upon hours, there is a surface level game planning that goes on in these
Oh yeah,
games when they come in there because they have to somewhat surface level prepare these players going in, especially if they already have familiarity with the team they play. And one of the reasons I say this is because there's no way you can convince me that the Detroit Lions did not game plan that first drive. Specifically, if you really pay attention to that game, they did a good job making sure that the offense that operated from the left side of the hash marks last night, which basically ultimately drove the whole drive
right.
down there. They got Jeff Goff on them left hash marks, and they basically ruined the Atlanta Falcons. So they had to have seen something surface level to be able to show them that, hey, okay, we can run this ball to the left side. Jeff Goff does very well on that left hash mark and be able to really get the Falcons reeling. And they did that. They up-tempoed the game, which is good for the Atlanta Falcons
Right.
defense because they needed to test their conditioning, right, too, as well. So they sped up the game a little bit for that defense to really get them going. So I'm not really concerned about that. If we've been able to really come in and game plan for that, then I think our team would have been much better prepared. But I'm not really concerned about that because of what Detroit Lions were able to do based on the surface level type of game plan they did last night for their first drive to get that score.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I'm not like super concerned. I would have liked to seen more pressures out of the first team defense
Yeah,
with Grady and Lorenzo Carter and Ogundeji out there. But as the game, and we'll get into the offense here in a second, but as the game wore on, like Ebiketie was getting some pressures last night, and
yeah,
Malone was stepping up and playing well as well. So I was encouraged by that, but I was hoping to see um, the defensive line get some more push on the first drive. But hey,
yeah,
like you said, these are the things that we need to see, and we need to see now. If they feel like they're not getting
yeah,
enough push from the defensive line early on, maybe they do look at going to go out and get somebody like a Sheldon Richardson or maybe even try to work in Ndamukong Suh kind of deal. I'm just throwing the names out there. I'm not suggesting that that's what
yeah.
they should do because as we get on, there's going to be some other names that we're going to talk about. So now let's get into the fun part when we got in the first team offense. Now we had a little bit of a scare with Drake London. He got one reception for 24 yards, which was great to see. That crossing route, he come
Mm-hmm.
wide open and was able to take it for like I said a 24-yard gain. But he come up kind of hobbled, holding his knee a little bit, but it didn't sound like it was anything too serious. They obviously we'll get more testing in the next day or so and see what transpires. But he seemed to be in good spirits last night on the sideline. So hopefully it'll be just a slight bang up.
Yeah, they I'm just gonna tell you. I mean, what was encouraging, he did run off the field after that
Right.
hit. The other thing was is that if you guys remember last year, when we played the Saints up in their house, this was that same deep crossing route that Pitts had got a nice gain off of as well with Matt Ryan last year. So to see London running it just similar to that is very encouraging because now that means you're going to have these guys, they're going to be able to run interchangeable
Yep.
routes between him and Pitts. And that's going to be dangerous for any team to try to stop those same routes that they're going to be able to produce off of. But they were killing Detroit Lions defense off those bootleg
Dude,
rollouts
all
all
night
night
long, but
last
yeah.
night.
Like, okay, you really couldn't quantify, or at least I couldn't quantify. We can make like statements or what have you, but one of the things that really stood out last night was how much better Arthur Smith's offense looked with a quarterback that can move around. And
Yeah.
I said after that, first that first drive, Mariota ran 3 times for a total. I'm going to get these. I want to make sure I get these numbers right. He ran for a total of 23 yards, so he picked up 7.7 yards a carry on those three
Yeah.
carries that he had, and one of them being for the touchdown. But
Yeah.
as he goes through the season, the one thing we were worried about, even in preseason, he was taking some shots that you'd rather see him not necessarily take. That one on the sideline, on the right side of the field, one of the first runs he did.
Yeah.
Um, that was something that I wasn't encouraged to see. You want to see him kind of protect himself
Yeah.
a little bit better. But that's Mariota, right? So you hope his
Yeah.
conditioning is better than it has been in the early parts of his career.
Yeah.
But I mean, he had 2 completions for 36 yards. I'd like to see him next week, like throw a little bit more. Because that was something that we've had reports coming out of camp, like the deep ball accuracy might be a little off. So I'd like to see him, go through those progressions and throw a little bit more before he just takes off and runs per se. Not saying that I don't want him to run. I do, and you can definitely see that that's going to be a major factor in this offense. But he's going to have to also attack, the defense with his arm, or they're just going to start coming
Yeah.
up and waiting on him to run.
Yeah. So I'll say this concerning that. One of the things Mariota said when he was interviewed the first time around, and they asked him, if he could do some things differently than he did in 2019, what he would do. And one of the things he said was, if he regretted one thing, was he didn't speak up about the things that he didn't like and the things that he liked. And I think you saw last night that he wants to run that football, and he didn't do that a lot when he was under center with Arthur Smith the first time around. And he's making that clear that, look, if I'm coming in here, I'm gonna give it everything I got. I have to be able to do everything that I'm good
Right.
at. And running the football with your legs is definitely one of them. And if he gets hurt, I think the way he's looking at it so big, because this might be his last opportunity to get with another team and become a starter. So he wants to take his last shot, if that is what it's going to be, and give it all he's got. And he did that last night. And so that part was encouraging, to see him just lay it all out on the line, even though it's a preseason game, get used to getting his feet wet again, running the football, and becoming that starter for the Atlanta Falcons. So that part I can understand. I guess he sacrificed, and if he gets hurt,
Yeah, I mean,
so be it.
you can't play scared. That much is for sure. If that's part of your game, you just have to go with it and go for it. I will say this: like watching him on film last night on broadcast, he's a lot faster than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a lot
Yeah.
quicker than I initially gave him credit for. So that was one of the things that kind of just like really jumped off the screen to me, was just how quick and sudden Mariota is when he takes off and starts going. You know,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see how that continues to go. We didn't have obviously our top two targets, or what we feel like are going to be our top two targets. Brian Edwards didn't play, and then London went out after that one play. But we need some of these other like receivers to step up a little bit more. Like Cordell Hodge actually looked pretty good last night.
Yeah.
And we've heard rumblings that he's making waves, and he put it on display last night. Uh,
Yeah.
Geronimo Allison had a chance to make a couple real good catches, and he got one, but he like on that goal line, he needed to score on that one. He needed to fight
Yeah.
through and get to that goal line.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I it was odd. We spent a lot of the offseason talking about these big receivers, and that wasn't what was on display last night.
Right.
What
Right.
was on display was Cordell Hodge and uh, Frank Darby had him a couple pair of catches.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Batson, Jameer Bird was
yep.
getting catches from Desmond Ridder.
So
So yeah.
that's kind of ironic. But now last training camp when we were up there on Sunday, I felt like the dream was starting to die, but it got like revamped last night. Did you see Quadre Olison running that ball, man?
Yes. Yes, and yes, and I tell you what, when you got a mobile QB, I tweeted this out last night. The threat of having that mobile QB to open up run lanes for the running back. I mean, they was part in the Red Sea for Quadri Oldison to bust through there for them 20-yard, 15-yard, 20-yard chunks, and that was great to see last
Right,
night.
yeah, he had 5 runs for 33 yards at a 6.6 average. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
a good deal. And then, later in the game, Tyler Algier looked real good with
yeah,
his, he had 3 runs of 25 yards. So, and I think it was only 3 runs, but Damon Williams looked, he had a
yeah.
couple productive runs. I'm still worried about the interior of the offensive line because
Mm-hmm.
it looked like anytime that's where the play went, it got swallowed up pretty good. So I still have a concern about the interior of the offensive line, but they didn't give up no sacks last night,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
McGarry didn't get beat like a drum, so that was good to see. So yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to see how like this continues to progress. But the offensive line all the way through was a better looking offensive line than we saw at any point in time last year.
Yeah,
So I don't know if
yeah. And
if Dwayne Ledford is like really got his feet under him and is and coaching his butt off, but um, like even the second and third stringers were able to hold up and give some pockets.
yeah. So when they kept that pocket, the quarterbacks, both quarterbacks, Marcus and Desmond, kept that pocket moving all night. And that
Yeah.
helps your offensive line as well when the launch point is not in the same spot. Much respect to Matt Ryan, but you pretty much knew where Matt Ryan was going to
Yeah.
drop at in order to throw the
Yep.
football, right? So you don't have that. You sent a message last night to the Saints that you're going to have to plan for the launch point to be anywhere on the field because they're going to move that pocket as much as they can, especially to help not expose that offensive line. Now, one thing I will say, if you wanted to know why Jermaine Ifedi is not challenging McGarry for his job, just go back to that game. He did not play too well
Mm-mm.
last night with the second string
Nope. He
guys.
didn't play. He didn't play too well. Dahlman blew a few blew a
Yeah,
few assignments last night. Um, Hennessy didn't look like a complete and utter train wreck, and I wonder
yeah, he
how much
didn't.
that had to do with the fact that Mayfield wasn't beside him and that he had
Yeah,
Wilkerson beside him. But I'll say this: Mayfield didn't look like a complete and utter liability. He was still getting pushed around last night, but
good.
like I said, he didn't look like a complete liability like he did last year. And I mean, kudos to the all the people who were like, mobile quarterback's gonna help out. It's definitely like through a preseason, it has, through one preseason game, it has definitely made a difference. Because
Yeah,
I honestly believe, had that been a more stationary quarterback, the middle of that interior line still doesn't look great. They're still
no,
not able to
no.
get, any real good push, you know. So, like you said, rolling out, moving the launch point. Um, if you can get some, run game going and be able to work off some play actions, I don't know how many times, Mariota was, before he took off running, he was essentially standing alone, on one side of the field, like surveying. You know,
Yeah,
Nobody was open, so he took off running. But you know, it's good to see that. Like I said, you really got to see more of the vision of what Arthur Smith
yeah,
wants this team to be. And I'll say this, preseason or not, you saw a lot more bunch formations last night.
yeah, yeah. Especially when Ritter came up. And I mean, for a lot of people that probably don't know this, if you want to kind of see what the offense is planning on doing, watch the second string guys. That's when they really run a lot of the offense. And you saw that last night.
Mm-hmm.
Ritter went through 3 whole quarters, and he showcased enough for Mariota and Rags. They like to call him instead of Ragon. Um, they like to call him that, and I think they're going to have so much film now to be able to look at and see the things Ritter done because whether you know it or not, Marcus is going to be doing a lot of that stuff that Ridder did last night and modeled for him last night. So those types of throws you saw, we're going to see Marcus make those types of throws. Now, how good he's going to be at it, doing it, when he does get ready to do it, that'll remain to be seen. Because like you said, last night he didn't do a lot of throwing last night. He really used and showcased his legs. But I think, man, Ridder has an opportunity, man, because now you got a lot of snaps for him to continue his development and where you want him to go. And I'm sure you want to get into that, talking about his stat line for last night.
So last night it was interesting. Like, we, of course, like, the late game heroics we'll get into here in a little bit, but so everybody like come off that game like super high on Ridder, and as they should be. Like, I think for his first NFL game, like first pro game, I know it's preseasons against 2s and 3s, but it was the NFL structure. Okay, so for that first structured, he went like 10 for 22, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns, had 6 carries for 59 yards at 9.8 yards a carry. So, yes, I'm super happy and super high on his performance, but also trying to remind folks that he did go 10 for 22. That's less than a 50% completion rating. We need to get that completion rating up. You want that to be more like 15 for 22 or 16, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, some of those weren't helped by, the receivers, dropping the ball. Like Felipe Franks almost made a circus catch, down the field.
Yes, he did.
And, dude, if he'd have come down with that ball, that would have been, like, awesome. But you did see some of the Ridder throwing behind his guys, or, just a little, his accuracy is just a little off. So I'll be interested to see if he gets a chance to run with, Pitts and London and some of those guys, because like you feel like they brought those, they're not so much worried about his accuracy because of the catch radius of our, of our main targets.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he will get that opportunity to do that right now. But what I will say is this, like I said before, the modeling portion of it for what Marcus and Mariota and Arthur Smith plan on doing, he's going to give them a lot of snaps in that situation for them to be able to watch on film to see what they can do and possibly change stuff they don't like before going into the season. I think this is a great strategy that Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith had to go and get someone similar to a Marcus Mariota, because now they have so many advantages going into a season. Then you got these 2 scrimmages coming up, the Jets next week, who we play on Monday Night Football, and then the Jaguars. And now you have all of that and all of this film you're going to have going into week 1, getting ready for the New Orleans Saints. I'm actually starting to feel good about what they could possibly do going into that game.
Yeah, it's like one of the things I came out of this game encouraged by the run game and encouraged by the offense in general, because you were 3 points shy from scoring the same total number of points as you did all last preseason. Like, straight up. Like, had they been able to kick another field goal somewhere instead of having to punt, you only scored 30 points last preseason, like all 3 games.
Yeah.
And you almost did that last night. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be, the offense is going to be humming all season long. I don't know. There still remains to be seen. But I'll tell you this. This time last year, that sense of dread and foreboding was heavy on me after that first preseason game. And I don't have that same sense of dread. I can see where there's things that need to be worked on. Again, I would love for them to announce that they're signing J.C. Treader. Like, I won't come off that, because Hennessy still looked overwhelmed at times. Dahlman was still blowing, his assignments and missing blocks. So, like, that's still a concern to me, that interior of the offensive line. But, through one game, McGarry looked like he was doing well, holding his own. Jake Matthews is Jake Matthews. And Chris Lindstrom, I think he had one holding or false start penalty. But other than that, like, a lot of those big runs came off of that right side, which is what you had envisioned when they drafted Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry.
Yeah, yeah. I hated we couldn't see Troy
Yeah.
Anderson last night. I really was looking forward to seeing him. But I'm gonna tell you what, Jr. If Malone and Ebiketie is our future for pass rushing, we might have something there. And along with Desmond Ridder, man, we might have a future ahead of us. You go into 2023, and I know we're not there in 2023 yet, and you continue to build on these guys, man, we might be able to get ourselves back into playoff contention consistently like we were when Matt Ryan was here his first 8 to 9 years with the Atlanta Falcons, man. And that's what ultimately us fans want to get back to and win a Super
Oh
Bowl, of
yeah, for
course.
sure.
But man, just getting back to that point, we might have a bright future after watching those three guys
It
last night for the
it
Atlanta
was like,
Falcons.
and to me, the last sequence of that game-winning touchdown, yes, it was a hope and a prayer when he threw it up, but that whole
Yeah,
sequence was an encouraging sequence.
my
Right,
guy.
right. Not just like, okay, yeah, we're gonna get to that, but okay, you get up to the line, Ritter changes the protection, and when he
Yep.
changes the protection, he shifts it more to the right, and Tyler Algier, where everybody kind of questioned like what his like uh pass protection was, kind of the one question mark he had coming into the season. That Joker steps up in the hole and
Yeah.
meets that linebacker. If he don't
Stonewall.
meet that linebacker, that play's dead. Like straight
Yeah.
up. They were coming in that A gap.
Yeah.
If Tyler Algier doesn't recognize that and step up and meet it, then Ritter doesn't have time to roll out. He's gonna get
Yeah.
swarmed. They hit that almost like a dual zone block, split the defensive line. Algier steps up in the hole, meets the linebacker. Ritter gives Ritter enough time to roll out and see he's got one
Yeah.
on one with Bernhardt.
Yep.
And he rolls
Yeah.
out and
Oh no.
throws a hope and a prayer. But that's what
Yeah,
you
he
want him
does.
to
Yeah.
do. In
Yeah.
that situation, fourth
On
and
him.
9,
Yeah.
that's what you want him to do.
Well, yeah.
And I hate to
Yeah.
say it, but that's the play Ryan don't pull the trigger on.
Yeah.
Ryan either eats the sack or he throws it out of bounds because he don't want to turn it over, right?
Yeah.
But what you want is to give your guy a chance. Like, I don't know if it looked like he was falling away, like when he threw the ball, which it tends to be a recipe for disaster. But it worked out, right? And the whole time when Bernhardt
Yeah.
caught that thing,
Yeah.
I'm over here looking for a flag the whole time.
And should have been one, but it's preseason, so they're not going to call that holding on the defender. He was all over Bernhardt, but Jared, man, that's the guy I told you, Jr. I'm just gonna have to be wrong on because this guy really a converted lacrosse player, the best lacrosse player in the
Yep.
country, right? They kept saying that all night last night. To make that catch, and he gets on the sideline, the first thing he does is tell Arthur Smith he didn't run a good route, and you heard Arthur Smith say, "Dude, hey, you just made a game-winning catch. Don't be so hard on yourself, man.
We'll
We'll
get that
get that
route
route
worked
the
out.
next time." But yeah, but man, I love Jared Bernhardt, man. I don't know what it is about him, but number 83 has stolen my heart when I watch this
I
dude
will
play,
say
man.
this. Fontenot and Ryan Pace and all them guys in the front office, Kyle Smith, all them guys, they have done a good job of bringing in athletes and bringing
Yes.
in like you got the Bernhardts, you got the Troy Andersons and those guys who
Yeah.
are, at the end of the day, they are just like elite athletes. So we'll try to figure
Yeah. Felipe
right,
Franks.
Felipe Franks, like we'll try to
Yeah.
figure out how to use you, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
even Avery Williams last night, he had that
Yeah.
one catch for 9 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. Quick
Right, and
screen. Yeah.
he looked real
Mm-hmm.
good. Now you imagine that same quick screen, but it's Cordell Patterson, with
Yeah.
the 200,
Or
or
Drake
yeah, or
London.
Drake London. So I mean,
Yeah.
what you got to see last night was a great step in the right direction. Now, can
Yeah.
they continue to build off of it? Can
Yeah.
we? Ebiketie was close on a handful of those, pressures. Can we convert
Yeah.
some of those into sacks? Malone out there converting speed to power and just
Yeah.
walking dudes around. For a guy his size, he's really, got to be catching people off guard with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
can we start
Yeah.
converting that into like actual sacks? And
Yeah.
so like I said, I come out of last night very encouraged by what I saw. My concerns going
Yeah, I
forward is
was.
still the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah,
Can Hennessy or Dahlman really bow up? And if not, is the front office and coaching staff willing to go outside and get somebody else? Kind of deal. But
yeah. Well, I mean,
go ahead.
we'll see. No, I said
Yeah,
we'll
and I
see.
think like with the fact that they're able to do what they can do now with like moving the launch point, they may not be as concerned about it.
Yeah,
They may think to themselves, okay, we're getting big enough holes on the right and left side that will handle and absorb the negative or barely any gains up the middle just to keep the sides honest kind of deal.
mhm,
And
yeah,
so if the offensive line can turn in another stat line of 0 sacks, like
yeah,
I'll back off of it for a little bit myself.
yeah. I'll tell you, man. When's the last time you saw the reserves help
Oh man,
win a
come on,
game and get a
come
sack?
on!
And get a sack in what minute and 30 seconds
Not
left?
just the sack. Then
You
you
know,
had
you
D.
do it.
Alford with an interception.
Yeah, in the game, and
Yeah,
Tabor looked good last night. I mean, it was some guys that really stepped up to help win that game last night as
right.
reserves. Okay,
Like
again,
tell like somebody who if his name wasn't already on like the radar should definitely be like Timmy Horn getting in the backfield like he did.
yes. Oh man, it's like you was ready,
Yes,
anticipated that was going to happen, and
that big
jumped
old
on it.
dude knifing through
Yeah,
there and like he looked like he shot the quarterback. Oh God, he's here, And
yeah,
like even if that quarterback held on to it, like he was gonna get
yeah,
swallowed. So
yeah,
and again, maybe that's why they're not as because Derek Tangelo showed well last night. Timmy
yeah.
Horn, yep.
Taquan Graham,
Dalton was it Dalton? Yeah,
yeah,
Jalen
Jalen
Dalton
Dalton,
showed up well
yep,
last night. So if they keep this up, they may not be going to look for any defensive linemen. But yeah, man, there was a good bit to be encouraged about last night, and I
yeah.
definitely I ain't gonna lie, I was not expecting to have that as a result. Like I was
No,
hoping for like okay, because you had the night before you had Malik Willis out there for Tennessee, looking like a Houdini or a young Michael Vick, so to speak. And people were already like, "Oh, we passed up on this guy for Ridder," and I was like, "Oh, great, here we go." We're over here going to start arguing about third round quarterbacks. You know, and so for Ridder to come in and play with the confidence and the poise and be able to
yes,
move the ball the way he did and play, 3 quarters of football really, and
yeah,
look like he belonged out there. I think
yeah,
should silence a lot of doubters, at least in the aspect of we know why they picked up Ridder. We know why they chose Ridder.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I don't know about your Twitter timeline, but mine was all crickets after that
oh yeah,
game. I didn't hear anything about Malik
no,
Willis
no. I
last
even
night.
yeah, like I even put out a tweet. I was like, well, hopefully this will calm some of y'all's nerves down, and I got some decent replies about that. But yeah, like if nothing else, last night showed you the thought process of taking Ridder. And if
Yeah,
he can continue to build and grow on that, like I hope some of y'all can see now how this easily could be a Russell Wilson situation, could be a Dak
yeah,
Prescott situation that we have on our hands. Like we could be going into
yeah,
next year, like getting a like true like fire breather on the defensive line, or
yeah,
the best right tackle or guard or whatever to make our or the best center or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like we could
yeah,
because like if this trajectory can keep going, we could be going into next season being able to really address get another blue chip player. So which would be
yeah.
that's what we want, right?
Yeah, I tell you what, Dez Bryant definitely wasn't shy about his praise on Desmond Ridder. He was high on Desmond when we
Yep.
drafted him, and he was really high on him last night after he saw him play. I mean, he mentioned about how he could be, you know, like a
Right.
Dak Prescott, basically, you know, and be a steal for the Atlanta Falcons being taken in the third round, such as he was. He said this guy could be very dangerous in the NFL once his gameplay matches his confidence that he already
Yeah,
showed.
and I agree. Like the poise that he showed last night. Yes, he had had an interception that was overturned and had another almost
Yeah,
interception dropped. But those are the things you expect out of a rookie.
yeah,
So anybody that's wanting to harp on him over that, like he was able to put that stuff out of his mind and
mm-hmm.
step up for the next play. What I saw out of Ritter was a young man who was composed and who was able to operate, in this offense and move the ball down the field, and that was
Yeah,
something that was highly appreciated last night. Had
yeah.
me smiling at times. That much is for sure. Toby, is there
And
anything else we need to cover, brother? I think we just about got it.
man, I think in football terms, they say I've emptied
That's
out my
it, man.
bucket.
My bucket is empty. I'm fixing to go head towards the high school and then try to help coach in my first scrimmage game with my eighth grade football team. So we're gonna see how that transpires. I'm gonna put my play charting to the test and see if I can do this in live action. Start
Amen.
charting plays and letting our head coach know how we looking and how we doing. So as always, folks, y'all can catch us on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128, GRIMM1128. Toby?
OBD 1991
That's it.
all
And
day.
like, links are in the bios as far as like merch or Patreon if you want any of that stuff. But if not, man, just keep your eye on the channel as we will be live on Tuesday again, coming off of the open practice down at the stadium on Monday. If y'all are down there Monday, make sure y'all look for us and say what's up if you see us. But yeah, man, we're bringing you as much football as we can. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
Rise up.